Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's discussion for TEL 711 for our Module 7. So our prompt this week is, after reading the material on social learning theory and interviews, discuss your thoughts about the inquiry and research process by responding to each of the following questions. Based on your understanding of the Creswell readings on pages 149 to 151, describe either a performance measure or an attitudinal measure, and why did you choose this measure? So I will kick us off again and say that I did pick an attitudinal measure. So my current problem of practice addresses the need for effective educator professional development and training for technology integration. I currently, in my context and my work, use a lot of digital Google surveys, Google Forms to collect a lot of data on like programs, whether it be qualitative or quantitative, but often these surveys are very behavioral in their approach, in terms of like, what are your thoughts on the effectiveness of something, or what are your perceptions of this? So this is really aligned with where I'm going to be. I'm working on an attitudinal measure that will be intended to ask educators about their beliefs and like self-perceptions regarding their self-efficacy with their technology integration as it exists, and then like post program, like how do they feel their self-efficacy is. I think that it's hard to ask questions about effectiveness without getting that whole like behavioral like self-perception. So that's the reason that I took that approach with it. Coupled with, if you heard my conversation in the last discussion about, I sometimes shy away from performance measures, particularly when it's sort of creative things, and technology integration is like a really multifaceted sort of approach. While you can, I think, base certain things on performance, I think that it's like you are boxing yourself in and just not really considering a lot of other factors. So that was the tool that I chose, and that's the path I'm going to go.
Kelly, are you going to be developing that tool yourself, or is it an existing tool, or is it a form of something you've already been working with?
Yeah, so it's going to be a combination. So I am very much interested in if you've heard of Tpac, which was actually on our Google Slides where we had like 50 different learning theories. Okay. Tpac stands for technical, pedagogical, and content knowledge. So it is itself a measurement. It's a tool. But there's like 50 questions on it. And in the context where I'm at and where I am with the current research, that's way too many. Like my stakeholders would flip out if I said I wanted to ask the teachers 50 questions. Yeah. So I'm gonna modify that essentially. And that's like my ultimate tool that I'm gonna develop for. But I feel like I will, because I make so many surveys and questionnaires measuring these sorts of things, I even see cycle zero research while I'll be doing an interview. Like, these will be behavioral questions that I will likely like capture in a spreadsheet in that sort of way. But yeah, the Tpac framework is it's nice that tool exists. And I have gone and looked up lots of tools and read lots of different like survey instruments to try to like help me formulate one that I'm going to use, and I use them to help inform the ones that I create now. So it's a great question.
That's great. Well, I'm happy to go next. I can tell you, so my problem of practice, just as a reminder, is really to look at advancing flourishing practices among senior level leaders in academic medicine in an attempt to impact system factors that are exacerbating the burnout levels in academic medicine. And so, I think for me, I'm looking at doing a mixed methods approach, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe all of the instruments, or, I've sort of got lots of ideas, but I need to sort of hone in. But I do know that an attitudinal index is one of the major things that I'd like to use in sort of a pre-post fashion. And it's actually the flourishing index that comes out of Harvard's Human Flourishing program. And in the spirit of what we read this week, it is a newer index. It was actually introduced in 2017. Dr. Tyler Vanderweel is the creator of it. And from 2017 till now, he has been, it's actually available on his website under a Creative Commons license. So anyone can use it as long as they cite it. And then he's asking for kind of reports back so that he can continue to look at both the reliability and the validity of the tool. So he has used it in a number of different environments. So some manufacturing, some higher ed. He's gone global with it. He's partnering with Gallup to sort of look at some of the things on the Gallup poll to see how they make have, you look at the validity of his index in comparison to how they're asking questions. And he just actually, there's a paper, I got a preprint version of it from him, and it'll be coming to print soon. So I know that that's what I'm going to use. It's kind of he's got 5 domains that he measures across on a scale of 0 to 10 in terms of where you would find yourself. So it is a self-report, kind of attitudinal way to get at how one perceives their own flourishing. One of the things that I think I really like about it, though I'm curious, he is now going to be finishing his global study, because I was nervous when it first came out, that it was a very sort of Western and perhaps even privileged index. And so that concerns me. However, I am going to be using it with senior leaders in academic medicine, so they do probably solidly fit in that privileged Western mindset. So I'm kind of thinking either way, it could be a valid source for me.
And how long is this survey?
It's 10 questions. So it's 2 questions per domain. And then interestingly enough, he added 2 additional questions under a 3rd domain, which he calls his secure flourishing. And that gets at financial resources. And that's really because, again, in our country, we tend to consider flourishing also attached to monetary and financial security, where, of course, his studies in all sorts of other places, that's not even remotely a factor. In fact, he would tell you, and my lived experience has proved this too, that there are higher rates of mental well-being flourishing in countries where they're very under-resourced as compared to us. But anyway, so I would also probably add those 2 questions to mine, knowing that the individuals that I'm dealing with are highly resourced.
Yeah, interesting.
I think that's, I know you're about to go, Sandra, but I just wanted to say, I think that's really cool that you are sort of helping, like you're doing your research, but you're helping someone else do their research by you using their tool. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's a neat partnership, so it'll be fun to be a little bit of a part of it. But I'm also I like the fact that he's far enough along, like 2017 to 2022, that I feel like I can feel comfortable and confident using it as well.
Yeah. So yeah, it's got some years under it, so that's good.
It does.
So I am not sure about just about anything right now, but that's okay. So if you remember, my problem of practice has to do with looking at a first year seminar, which is a strategy that many schools, many universities and colleges use to help first time in college students with the transition, right? And typically this course is very much a studies, like a student success course, like a student life skills, like 101. What do you need to survive? But really, who's defining what you need to survive? It's like the library's here, financial aid is over there, and it's very much oriented to building college knowledge. So part of what I'm hoping to do is to contextualize that course in such a way as to incorporate a theme that is important to the college overall, which is about change making. And change making, by definition, will call forth conversation around self and identity and learning what your gifts are and understanding how the world needs those gifts, right? So it's some of that poetry, but then also doing it in such a way that you can build in, very tactical, study oriented, study skills oriented techniques that have to be sort of taught or, shared with students. Anyway, that being said, there's an instrument that we do use at the college. It's the CCSSE. It's the Community College Survey of Student Engagement, and it's administered nationally every 4 years to community colleges everywhere. And there's a sampling of courses. We have about 50 to 60,000 students in the first, and at any given point in their first semester. So the college does a sampling of courses at each one of our 8 campuses, and that's how they come up with the sampling size. When I first started in the college in 2018, I don't know how I managed to score an opportunity to add 2 questions to that national survey. So there's like a subset of MDC specific, and I don't know how it happened, but they got put in there. But it's interesting because we don't talk much about this survey, at least I'm not invited to the table to this conversations. So 2018 came around, went by, and then I looked at 2022 just recently, and I was like, hey, wait, there's data on us on this change making stuff. And I think what it does is this survey is, I would say, a performance instrument, because it assesses institutional practices and student behaviors that correlate highly with student learning and retention. So it's asking questions like, did you take a first-year course? Do you go to the library? Do you do this? Do you do this? It's pretty like vanilla, but it's a place for me to start in terms of, I'm not sure if I'm going to be using any of that in terms of what I want to measure, but it gives me an idea of the kinds of questions that I might want to administer from a performance perspective, to sort of shrink down to just my sample size for when I do this pilot. The other side, though, is the attitudinal. And I think about the 4 attributes of change making that are central to our work, which is to build empathy, to become self-aware, to demonstrate resilience, or maybe grit, and to take action. So when I think about those 4 competency areas, Dr. Smith and I were once talking about, maybe that I would be looking to survey students about their attitudes towards these 4 change-making attributes as they develop during that course. So it's a mishmash of stuff. I know enough to be dangerous, but I really don't know what I'm doing just yet, but I'll get there. But I've got some choices. I've got some options.
It sounds good. It sounds like you've got a good start. I'm curious, like learning more from you about change making in any of your research. Have you encountered any surveys or measurement tools related to change making at all in any of the like current published literature?
No, not consistently. I think that's the challenge, is that there is no consistent literature on change making education. So in a way, it's like exciting because you're building it in a way. And it's also extremely daunting because that's not, I didn't want to start building all of that. But I do have one colleague that I want to interview who is at Tulane University, Dr. Laura Murphy, and she's been very prolific in writing about change making from her institution's perspective, and she's very academic in her thinking. So I really want to tap into her to sort of like take from her as much as I can, because I'm very much on the practical side, where she's like really looking at it from a much more conceptual side. I'm hoping that something will come out of that conversation. I'm sure it will, but I just haven't tapped her yet. But there's nothing out there, Kelly, because there's no universal agreement as to what is change making. There's a lot. It's almost like everyone kind of knows what it is, but when you start asking 10 people for their definition, it's 10 different definitions. So all I can do is really at this point think about the universe of MDC, and where we do have a definition. We do have some constructs that are associated with it. We can define it. So now maybe I will build a survey for just the MDC universe that has to do with a combination of performance and attitudinal, indicators. So maybe.
Well, Sandra, I have to tell you that, flourishing, there's not much in the literature about that either. And there is, from a positive psychology perspective, so Marty Spillman has been, kind of the father of positive psychology. Angela Duckworth actually started under his lab as a student, right? But academic medicine, and I would say the world that I'm reading in, they're not as enamored with the positive psychology approach to things. And that's why you see this work coming out from Dr. Vanderweel and others from Harvard who would like to maybe take a slightly different slant than the positive psychologists have. So, so we subscribe to Dr. Vanderweel's work, and then we kind of defined flourishing within the Kern National Network where I work, and at the Medical College of Wisconsin. So I think your road of like looking at how it's defined at your institution and talking to some other academics, but really coming back to how it's defined in your environment and thinking about a measure within that, that seems really, really wise, right? Because it keeps it to your local context, which again is, is intended to be the focus of this, and who knows what doors it'll open for you in the future. But I think that's really smart of you to keep it in that space.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I do want to think about some flourishing indicators as well, but we'll talk about that offline. So
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
All right, well, sounds good. And I hope you all enjoyed our conversation this week. So we will see you next time. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank
Thank
you.